Welcome to Toyota Time with Timothy Toolman. What I plan on doing today on my truck is I'm going to do the rear differential extended breather modification. And you might be asking, what's that? Well, right now, the way our vehicles came from the factory, our third gen 4Runners, is the breather is sitting right on top of the rear of the differential, on top of the pumpkin. And that's okay if you don't ever plan on going through deep water, or you don't live somewhere where the roads are salted because of the snow and they won't get corroded and basically rusted shut. So the reason why you'd want to do this is, number one, if you go four-wheeling and you might be crossing some creeks, your differential is going to be hot and it's going to be under a little bit of a higher pressure. And when you run through the cold water, that's going to quickly cool down the differential and basically create a vacuum situation where it's going to rapidly cool, and then while the breather's underwater, it may want to suck, create that vacuum and suck water into the differential, which wouldn't be good because now you're mixing water with your gear oil, and then it's going to mess up the lubrication of your differential. The second thing is mainly for people that live in areas where they get the road salts, and through time, that little metal breather will rust shut, and then now you're in a situation where the differential heats up. There's extra pressure that has to go somewhere, and because it can't get through the breather because it's rusted shut, it will push past your axle seals, and you might be able to be lucky and not destroy your axle seals, but sometimes it messes up the axle seals, and then you have to go in and pull the axles and replace the seals, and that's a lot of work. So this is a way to avoid those two things. I'm going to run the line up along the gas filler tube and have my breather sticking out right where the filler neck is, and I'll be showing how to do that. The things I bought for this: I bought some 5/16, says right here, 5/16 fuel injection hose, or just fuel hose. Some people say 3/8 is good, but I found that the 5/16 will fit a little tighter, better application for both of the fittings. One of the fittings, or the breather here, it's this thing right here. The part number is 90930033136. 90930033136. So that's this little plastic, plastic on the bottom and a little metal on top. And then the second thing I bought for this is this union. So this is what I'm going to screw into the differential and run the hose over to the breather at the filler neck. So the number for this is 9040451 319. 9040451 And then I bought myself some hose clamps, some small hose clamps. These are an application for 5/16 to 5/8 inch hose. And I did buy myself 8 feet of this hose, and I think that was overkill. I'll figure out how much I used, and then I'll be able, at the end of the video, I'll be able to tell you exactly how much so you get a better idea and not waste money. I think this was almost like $5 a foot, so it wasn't cheap. And then I bought myself a little knife set, so because I plan on cutting the little rubber gasket, or whatever you want to call it, this skirt around the filler neck, so I can put the tube up through there, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. So I bought this little cheap knife set at O'Reilly's. So those are the things I bought for this job. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the spare tire using the spare tire tool, and I'll show you where that's at if you're new to your 4Runner. You come in here on the rear passenger side, lift up the seat, and it's right here. You need this bad boy to crank the spare tire crank, and to be able to lower the tire to the ground, so you can pull off the spare tire and give yourself room to work. So that's what I'm going to do now. So this is how you get your spare tire out. So you got to have your hatch lifted. You grab your tool, you put it in this hole right here. You could feel it engage. Once you feel it engage, you can start cranking. Go counterclockwise and Just crank it till the tire gets on the ground. Let's see here. You can see it coming down right here. So you got to crank it till it gets to the ground, and then maybe a little bit more so you can get the fitting out of the way. Right here, you gotta let it down a little more, and then you could get this out of the way like that. Now you can pull the tire out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hydraulic jack. I'm going to jack up underneath the differential, and I'm going to support the axle with some 3-ton jack stands. And then I'm going to remove my left rear tire so I can have easier access to work in this location. This area right here, I'm going to be removing this so I can get access to the filler neck so I can use zip ties to run the hose up in there and secure it properly. Okay, for those that don't know, here's the differential right here. On the left side, on the driver's side, the stock breather is right here, and it's screwed right into the top of the differential. So you can see if you just go through a mild deep water, it's going to be underwater, and supposedly, like I said, a suction could be created and it's going to suck water in. And then another thing, like I mentioned before, is that this thing could get really rusted from the road salt. So where I plan on putting it in the filler, up at the filler neck, it's going to be out of the elements most of the time, and so it's going to stay a lot cleaner and basically not be underwater unless I submerge my whole truck. So I'll be taking this off, and then see these clips right here? There's one here and there's one over here, and so those hold this plastic piece that hides the filler neck. So those are the first two I'm going to get off, and then there's the upper ones, and those might be a little more difficult to take off, but I'm going to try to get that plastic cover off all the way so I can zip tie it properly and affix the hose in there. Okay, I'm just going to take some bent nose needle nose pliers and see if I can squeeze that and push it through. And it went flying. That's not good. Okay, I'm going to get that before I forget where it's at. Okay, so that came out pretty simple. Okay, let me get the next one. I think I just need to tack it at a different angle here. So come from the top. I got it. Okay, there's number 2. Alright, that was a little harder. Like I thought, these upper 2, there's one here and there's one over here. You can't get your hand in there with the tool to compress the little clip. So my plan is I'm just going to break it and then buy a couple. They can't be that expensive. So I'm just going to try to break it off and replace it. If I can even break it off. So I'll be prying on this and break it off, and then I'll just go to my local dealership and buy a couple. Okay, this is what I was after. I wanted to get that whole plastic piece out of the way, so now I can route the hose up this filler neck, and then I'm going to cut a hole in this grommet that goes around the filler neck. So you can see the back side there, and you can see the top side. So where I'm going to put this, haven't figured it out exactly, but I'm thinking, did I do this the best way? Well, I didn't see any other choice but to break those things. So I'm sure I can get them for pretty cheap. They're probably like $1 a piece or a couple bucks a piece at Toyota. Easier than trying to spend hours trying to get a tool behind there to get those clips off. Okay, next step is I'm going to take the old breather off and put the new fitting in and start running the line. Okay, I lied. The next thing I did is cut a hole. So when you look at the neck, it's kind of, it would have to bend right here where my finger is over on the other side where I first planned on putting it on the right side, but it seems to make a natural straight shot progression if I went up the pipe here and then went straight right there, so it ends up being on the left hand side. So I just cut a hole in it with my X-Acto blade, and I'll show you from the filler side. So it's going to be right here. So and it's rubber, it stretches, so that small hole will get you know, a piece of hose that big through there, no problem. So I mean, it's not perfect, but it's kind of hard to make it perfect with an X-Acto blade. So now I'm going to start routing the pipe, or routing the hose down. Okay, I put a straight cut on this, or pretty straight, with this utility blade, and then I'm going to grab one of my hose clamps, and put this on there, and then I'll slide the fitting on. I think I'm going to lubricate this with just a little bit of Teflon oil that I use for bike applications. It'll probably make it a lot easier to get on. Okay, put a little bit in here. I'll just keep it on the fitting. And I'm just wiggling it on there. Okay. Okay, that's seated all the way. And then I'll tighten the clamp, and then I'm going to start feeding the line down through the filler neck. Okay, so this is the next day, and I unfortunately realized that one of the memory cards I used to capture the footage of this modification had a major failure, and I lost the footage. So this is my attempt to fix that and hopefully still give some value to this video. So I'm going to go out to the truck, and I'm going to show you how I routed the line, and hopefully it will all make sense by doing it this way. Okay, so this is part of the lost footage. So when I put this fitting, the breather fitting, into the hose, you see how far it sinks down. So I put the hose clamp back as far as I could without clamping down on this barb right here, because I wanted it back as far as I could, because I want this hose clamp on the underneath the vehicle on the fender side. I don't want the clamp in the fill hatch area. Only thing I want sticking out on the fill hatch area is this breather from right about here. So I purposely put the clamp back as far as I could, and then when I had it all clamped up, I went from underneath the fender and pushed this breather through the hole that I made, and then I started zip tying it down the filler tube. I just followed the path of the main filler tube down underneath the vehicle. So this is one thing I wanted to show you that I lost in the footage. Now I'll go out to the truck and I'll show you some more stuff. Okay, I'm underneath the truck now, so I'm going to show you the way I routed the breather line from the differential towards the fill hatch. So the fitting here is kind of like this breather fitting. It's got a metal nipple, and then it's got threads like here on the end of the original breather. So this original breather comes off with either a 14 millimeter deep socket, or you can use an open end 14 millimeter wrench or one of the ratcheting wrenches, and it should come off pretty easily unless it's like you got a lot of rust. So just take that off first, and then what I did with the new fitting is I put a wrap of Teflon tape on the threads first, and then I tightened it up snugly. I didn't really crank on it, just to where it's snugged up tight. And if you could see it right here, there's just a few threads showing when it's tightened up properly. The lighting, you can see that, but there's just a little, you can see a little bit of the Teflon tape showing. So I put an extra loop, you can see here. So I kind of mimicked what the factory did with the brake line. So if I ever like lower the axle to maybe put in new springs or just for articulation, I put this extra loop. It comes kind of close to this bracket here, so I put an extra piece of hose with a couple zip ties for abrasion protection, and then you can see that it goes up along the fill tube, and I put abrasion protection right on this area because there's a bracket here. So it goes up along there, abrasion protection on the top side, and then it follows the fill neck right here. You can see that abrasion protection again right there. Put a zip tie there, and then when it goes over the top of this bracket, you know, this bracket could be a little sharp. So again, I put some extra hose, you know, cut a slit in it and made it as abrasion protection. Put a couple zip ties there to hold it in place, and then the breather hose just follows along the top of the fill pipe. You know, secured it with a couple more zip ties, and then it makes its bend up here to go up to the top of the fill neck behind the hatch. So I put a zip tie there in the corner to make it follow the curve, and then we'll go under the fender. Now luckily you already saw this whole plastic cover off for the fill tube, so you already saw that. So it basically comes up from underneath the vehicle and it follows the fill tube on the top and goes right out through the rubber grommet behind the fill hatch. Right here you could see that because I broke the two upper ones, this one right here and this one over here, I took the two ones that I salvaged from here and I put them up there, and then I just used zip ties. You could easily get zip ties in there to hold it in place. And then I went to Toyota and I bought two of the grommets, and they're really cheap. I think two of them cost me $3, and I'll show you that part number in a second. So there it is there. So it routes up through there, and then I have it, you can see I have it just sticking out enough to where the breather's exposed, but not the hose clamp. The hose clamp is on the opposite side. So I did run it from the top down. So I first pushed the breather through, and then I started zip tying the hose down the fill tube and then underneath the truck, and I finished at the pumpkin. So I kind of showed you in reverse how it was ran. And I hope that salvages this video because unfortunately, like I said, I lost the coverage. So let me show you the part number for those clips. Okay, so if you follow my lead and you just break a couple of those clips to get that gas fill tube cover off, this is the part number 90189-06212. Again, 90189-06212. And this is what the clip looks like. So I haven't installed it yet. I'm just going to cut those zip ties off that I put and put these new clips in, and it's good to go. So for $3, I'll break these things all day long to make it easier to run the line and be able to secure it really well underneath there. Some people decide that they don't want to mess with that plastic grommet or breaking the plastic grommets. So what they do is they just kind of push the hose up there as high as they can and call it good, because it's now much higher than it was on top of the differential. But the problem I see with that is because where it's located in that fender, there's still a lot of water and debris and dirt and stuff that's going to get past that cover. You know, it covers pretty good, but there's still gaps along the edges, so stuff is still going to get up in there. If you want to keep your breather much cleaner, then do what I did and run it all the way through the rubber grommet that's around the fill tube, and so it's protected underneath that hatch, and it's going to stay a lot cleaner and out of the contaminants from the roadway. Especially if you're in the Rust Belt and they salt the roads, you're going to protect it a lot more if you decide to just cut a little hole and run the breather right through that grommet, that rubber grommet. One thing I forgot to mention as one of the things I did to make the installation easier is to make sliding the hose over this breather and also the new union that you screw into the top of the differential is I just use a little bit of like bicycle lubricant, but you can just, you know, oil this with some motor oil, whatever you want, WD-40, just to make it a little bit slipperier, so when you try to push this breather in and to also slide the hose over that fitting on top of the differential that you put in, it just makes it easier. So if you lubricate it with something, I think that's the way to go, because if not, you're going to be fighting getting it over, because this 5/16 hose fits like almost perfect for this breather fitting, but the actual union is a little bit wider diameter, so it's a little bit harder to get that on. So you definitely have to lubricate that thing with something, or you're going to be fighting getting that hose over. So just make your job easier and lubricate it with something. Okay, one thing that's worthy of noting is that this breather is built differently than this breather. This is the OEM breather that comes with your truck, brand new. And this has, using this little pick tool, I can feel a spring, like, I don't know what you call it, like a spring gate or a shutter. So I suppose what that's for is that when the pressure basically exceeds the spring strength, it will let air pressure out. And then on the flip side, when it's closed and it's not under a lot of pressure, it's not going to let moisture in. But I still suppose it's good to do this modification, because if that little spring mechanism locks open and then you go through some deep water, you could suck water into there. So I mean, anything could fail, and this little spring thing in here, I could see it could maybe get a little corroded and fail. And this one is just a straight pipe all the way to this cap. There's nothing in between. There's no spring or anything here. So it's just a pure open breather, I guess you'd call it, without this OEM one with the spring where it won't let moisture in if it's actually working properly and seated all the way. But it's a very light spring. I'm just barely touching it and it's opening up. So it's a very light touch. So anyways, just thought I'd share that with you, that the OEM breather is built a little different than these aftermarket one, or whatever you want to call it. So that's all. In closing, again, the reason why you'd want to do this is if you plan on doing some four-wheeling, it might be going through some deep creeks and you don't want to take the risk of getting water sucked into your differential. And the other reason is if you live in the rust part of the country where they salt the roads and everything gets corroded and rusted underneath your rig, you want to run that into the breather into an area that's more protected, and behind the gas filler hatch is a good spot. You know, you're going to get a little bit of moisture, a little dirt, but not like it was being right on top of the differential, where it's going to get pelted by the salt and other debris and might rust it shut. So I hope you learned something today. I really think this is a worthwhile modification if you're going to go wheeling or live in the rust belt of the country. Thanks for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman, and I'll be back with more videos. Bye-bye.